Welcome everybody to ASTHRO's next stop on our roadshow circuit. My name is Heidi Henriksen. I'm here with Heather Richer on our ASTHRO team, as well as some wonderful industry experts. And we are stopping off in Nashville, obviously virtual today, but we're here to talk a little bit about what's going on in Nashville, speak to some local homeowners. Really excited to keep this to 30 minutes and share some great info with everybody. So with that, let's pop into our agenda. We're going to do a quick background on who ASTHRO is, the Association for Short-Term Rental Homeowners. And then our friends at Rent Responsibly are joining to speak a little bit about their advocacy efforts. Then after that, we will go into some of our market data local to Nashville, sponsored by Key Data Dashboard. And then we'll speak with a local homeowner that's been hosting in Nashville for quite some time about some interesting challenges and some best practice ideas. After that, we'll go into a local real estate expert and speak about what's going on investment-wise in Nashville. And then we'll wrap things up with a great little Q&A and some closing remarks. So we'll try to keep this to 30 minutes and jump right in. So ASTHRO was essentially created to support the short-term rental homeowner that's self-managing. Whether you've got one property or up to 5, we found the industry is very fragmented, and we wanted to bring resources, education, legal aspects, and a true community where everybody can connect. So we also found that roughly 50% of all short-term rentals are self-managed. So obviously a growing audience out there on a global scale. So we just launched a new website with ASTHRO, asthro.org, don't forget the H. And it has a fantastic business directory in there that's very targeted at short-term rental homeowners. So all of the vendors within the industry, they're listed in there. You're gonna wanna check that out. We also put out some great blog content on a weekly basis, our newsletters, and then we do list out our member perks and benefits on the website. So for joining as a member, you might want to check those out and pop over there. And then we created a great resource with our membership platform via Mighty Network. So it's a very modernized platform. We can organize conversations by topics. We list a lot of the great industry events in there, all of our e-learning courses, of course, and then many featured articles, great to interact with local members within our community. So again, it's free to join, and then we do have a paid membership tier. We'll speak about that a little bit later on today. And then we do want to touch on our education piece because this is a huge aspect of ASTHRO. We put together quarterly courses that focus on revenue management, investment tools, technology tools, and then cleaning and safety. You get the opportunity to work with an industry expert as the instructor, and then they actually hold office hours and do Q&A. So it's a fantastic opportunity to learn a lot about these different resources in the industry. So with that, we're going to turn this over to Dana Lubner, our friend from Rent Responsibly that's joined us today, and she could speak a little bit about how they're helping with advocacy in our industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, Nashville community. My name is Dana Lubner. I am head of leadership development at Rent Responsibly. And if you haven't heard about Rent Responsibly, to give you a little overview, we are a community building education platform for short-term rental alliances. So we provide alliance management tools to help local leaders create successful and sustainable organizations. So similarly to ASTHRO, we believe in empowerment through education and technology. Rent Responsibly wasn't around in the capacity it was when I first started my own local advocacy group here in Denver, Colorado. So I have the honor since joining the team as head of leadership development to create all of the tools and the resources that I wish I had. And so we work hand in hand with groups to help them hit the ground running and go that much further, that much faster. Some of the cool things that we've created over the last year is a lot of events and educational series that are geared towards developing leaders and equipping short-term rental community members with skills and resources to be more impactful and how they lead and run their organizations. And we have all of these events recapped on our website. So you can go to our website and go to events and recaps to learn more about those resources that we've already been providing to the community. Some of my favorite, I'd say a series called Lunch and Learn, which is with our founding partners that focus on how to leverage data to make smarter business decisions. Also, how to be proactive with how you properly manage your property, which in turn is definitely a form of advocacy when you think about how to be a good neighbor. And then a very popular topic is 2020 travel trends and post-COVID recovery predictions. So again, the Lunch and Learn series can be found on the website. And then also a leadership seminar series, which I helped put together. So we talk a lot about the importance of building community relationships and leveraging those relationships, as well as how to stoke your organization's fire and making sure that you don't have burnout, which I think is a pretty big topic this year in this pandemic world we continue to live in. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to point out to you, we are all about sharing and building resources that we hear from our community that they need. So we encourage you to reach out to us. If you don't find resources on our website, we love to create lists of resources our team can put together. But some of the resources that I have found the most helpful for me in my own advocacy journey are linked here on this slide. So if you have your phone and you do the QR code thing, it will take you right to our resource page. But the three I have here on the slide are the Good Neighbor Guide, which gives you really easy, practical ways to let your neighbors know that you are hosting at your property. You can offer them incentives to feel more comfortable to maybe book your property themselves, or offer to do things like, hey, if we have a lawn mowing service, I'm happy to cover your yard as well. Because not everybody is stoked about living next to a short-term rental, but there's steps you can take to build confidence and build that trust. We also have a public testimony guide. We're seeing regulations at Rent Responsibly pop up in almost every single town, city and municipality around the country, and honestly the globe. So the more comfortable you can get with being a participant in your community and becoming that local advocate and attending public meetings where you can speak up and use your voice, this guide gives you really practical takeaways to keep in mind when you prepare your testimony. And then last but not least, our DIY Alliance Building Playbook. So I know Nashville has NASTRO, which is an incredible community, but if you happen to be tuning in from somewhere where you don't already have an alliance built and you know you need one built in your community, this DIY guide is going to be an incredible resource to give you step-by-step tools and I'd say lists to follow so you know that you're getting the most out of building that group and hitting the ground running. And that's it from us at Rent Responsibly. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dana. And Heather's going to jump in a little bit about our industry statistics provided by Key Data. Heather, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good news and a positive outlook for Nashville. Obviously, as we saw in a lot of markets, there was a dip period with COVID. But as you can see here, the most recent data shows occupancy levels are back to 2019. And then pricing also bounced back. Pricing also saw a bit of a dip, but the fact that the market was able to get rates back in line is a really great sign. And then this pricing continues like into fall and winter. So this is more of that future outlook where we can see, you know, where have rates fallen? Where are they as of right now, looking ahead into Q4? So good story here. And then average length of stay has been really interesting to watch all over the country, actually. Number of travelers has increased. So we're seeing larger parties traveling together. That trend continues. And then you can see here, you know, the spike in the length of stay back in early or Q1, early Q2, and again, kind of coming back down in line with what the average length of stay was. And again, we know that because kids maybe weren't in school last year. You saw families traveling in September and October when typically they weren't. So that average length of stay for Nashville seems to be back in line with pre-COVID. So with that, I'll hand it back to Heidi, and we're going to take a few minutes to talk to Lisa and learn more about her story and her journey.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa, for being here today. It's wonderful to have you join us. And you are, I'm not sure if I got this right, but you are working with NASTRA. Not sure that was on a board member, but you've also been self-managing your own vacation rentals in Nashville for quite a while.
Yes, yes. First, thank you for having me. I'm happy to share my experience in Nashville. It's an interesting one. And yes, my husband and I have been a homeowner and short-term rental hosts in Nashville for a little over a year because we started in the market right before COVID hit. So we were invested and moving in that direction, furniture on order, permit in process, and then COVID hit. So it's been an interesting journey. And yes, I am a NASTRA board member as well.
That's wonderful. Awesome. So we obviously can see that there was this enormous hurdle for you opening this vacation rental right at the peak of COVID, but then you probably quickly found that it wasn't so bad of timing. What other challenges did you encounter when you guys first started out?
Well, we were experienced short-term rental hosts because we have another property, or at that time we had a property in Asheville. We still have it. And we have a third property now in Louisville, but this one was definitely our hardest to launch. It's a tricky market because of the permit and all the regulations. It's just like walking through a maze to try to, first of all, find the right property that is viable for a short-term rental. And then once you identify that property, there's a pretty lengthy process to get the permit. So we were, like I said, well entrenched in that when COVID hit. And the first thing we did was pivot to a midterm rental to weather out the early days of the pandemic when everything was shut down. And then as soon as things started to open back up again, our midterm relationship was ending. So we began our short-term rental journey there in Nashville. And I would say some of the biggest challenges are that a lot of hosts didn't make it through that season. They might have been highly leveraged, and some people went out of business as hosts. Some people went out of business as service providers. And so we were really scrambling to make sure all the pieces could come together. So I would say some of our biggest early challenges were finding service providers and dealing with very short weekend stays, which is what the typical traveler was doing there in the beginning. And I think, really riding it out in the revenue, like the low watermark of our revenue there, that was a big challenge, but things have bounced back. We're getting healthy length of stays now. I would still say it is combined to weekends. So we don't have any business travelers coming to Nashville right now. We don't have people coming for a lengthy stay, like a week, like taking a vacation there, because some of the music festivals and the things that might have been bringing people are not happening right now. I feel sure those will come back. And I would say another challenge is that a lot of our guests are first timers on the platforms because the industry is getting attention from a traveler that didn't used to stay or choose to stay in a short-term rental. So our industry, it's good. Our industry, our customer base is getting larger as people experience short-term rentals, which is great. So I don't know if I hope I've answered your questions there. One of the other points I would make is that I would say our rates are high, and our occupancy levels are higher than you might expect for a city the size of Nashville, when with a lot of public venues during this COVID season, because a lot of hosts have fallen away. So, the supply has gone down. But the demand is still there, if not increasing, because of, a higher demand for short-term rentals in general. So right now is a great time to be a host in Nashville if you weathered the COVID storm. It's a really good time.
Do you feel like there's still ample inventory opportunity? Because I heard rumor that it was really hard to get your permit, as you kind of touched on in Nashville. And so can you buy an established vacation rental that you know of that's already where the permits can transfer over to the new owner?
That is very tricky because many of the regulations, require the new owner. If it changes ownership, you have to completely reapply for a permit. Unlike some other cities where it is transferable. If you, like here in Louisville, we have a different type of permit where it would be transferable to a new owner because the property would take on a new classification. In Nashville, that is not the case. A new owner, or even if you are the same owner and you are putting your property into an LLC or something, changing the dynamics of ownership, it requires a new permit. And if you were grandfathered in, like if you came into the system before a new regulation would have allowed you to be there, then you're out of luck. So I would say the trickiest areas are in properties zoned residential, but there are many properties in Nashville. The way the city has grown, the population growth is crazy, and the building growth and the just large number of investment properties are there, but they're zoned commercially. So if you can find a commercially zoned property, you can you can be an investment owner in Nashville.
Sure. And I can see Pete Blankenship, who's joined us on the real estate side of things. He's kind of nodding his head and shaking both ways. So I know he has some great insight. But Lisa, thank you so much for giving us your perspective of what it's like to host in Nashville. And I think we'll pop over and start speaking with Pete and see what you can share with us as well on the real estate side.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
Your title right and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Pete Blankenship. I've been a sales executive and a realtor for Vacasa, which is the largest short-term rental management property owner in the United States. We have 45,000 properties under management currently. So, a big plus with me is that if you are interested in this market or any market for that matter, I could connect you with someone who is equally knowledgeable in that specific market. As Lisa alluded to, this market is very regulated. And if you're familiar with the Austin market, it very much correlates kind of as far as regulations go with that market. In this market, anything residential, there's two types of permits, which I know Lisa touched on, but we didn't really dig into the weeds. So anything residential is only going to be able to obtain an owner occupied permit. Anything else being commercial, mixed use, office, DTC, downtown zoning, etc., we'll be able to get that non-owner occupied permit. Starting January 1st of 2022, you will not be able to get any more non-owner occupied permits for RM multifamily zonings. So I would definitely recommend, if you're investing in a market like Nashville, to connect with there's someone like myself or Lisa, or someone that really understands the repercussions of purchasing this property and what that means, because I have a lot of clients right now calling me, and it's not like you're grandfathered in just if you buy it and you're in the process of getting a permit. You have to physically have that permit issued by January 1st. So we're pushing a ton of closings to October 1st so that we have plenty and ample of time to get these permits so that these owners aren't left, kind of caught out in the cold, because the city really doesn't make any exceptions in regards to that. And I've done many appeals on the behalf of owners that didn't choose to work with me, but came to me on the back end. And unfortunately, the very minimum we've ever gotten is a 6-month ban. The most I've gotten is 2.5 years. And that's pretty standard, is 2-year ban if you do decide to rent a property without a permit, or you decide to rent prior to getting a new permit after you close. One thing I will touch on that Lisa kind of alluded to is we typically, if we have an owner that is selling a property and a new owner is buying it, we will do what's called co-hosting, where that old owner can let them co-host under the old permit until the new one is issued. So there are several ways around it. And being that I've been here 5 years, it used to be a permit cost you $50. There's really no problem to get. Residential, you could still get non-owner occupied. There's been a lot of new regulation, including, distance to church, distance to playgrounds, all kinds of things that can keep you as a residential homeowner from short-term renting. So definitely just recommend connecting with someone like myself or Lisa or another expert in the industry in this area that can really get into the weeds and analyze your zoning to make sure that you can get the permit that you need, especially if you're an out-of-state investor that doesn't physically live here, because you need to provide proof of residency in a residentially zoned property. And two, obviously make sure that the viability that you can make money. I mean, as Lisa kind of alluded to, there are in certain areas like downtown, maybe the riverfront condos or near Nissan Stadium or the Illume building that my company exclusively manages. These are buildings where we are seeing, 1 to 3 day stays. But in our, our areas in East Nashville, maybe, or near the Nations or Germantown, we typically have larger properties that aren't single bedrooms. And yeah, these days we have some people stay up to 18 days sometimes, obviously, in order to make sure that we're not only capturing those weekend rates, but that we're, $100 a night on a weekday, even though your average rate is 700, is much better than zero, right, during those weekdays. So
maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Like if I'm looking to invest in a property in the Nashville area, but maybe some of what you're saying about the regulation and getting my permit would be tricky. Are there differences kind of outside city limits where, as Lisa said, there's demand? And as you're saying, right, there are these longer lengths of stay. So I am confident I could get my return. Can you talk about maybe like just outside the city, and maybe it's these large homes you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really the primary regulations I'm speaking of are related to Davidson County, obviously, which is Nashville proper and the surrounding area. When you get into Williamson County, for the most part, owner-occupieds, or I apologize, non-owner occupieds are pretty much banned. Brentwood, no short-term rentals to speak of at all. There's areas where you can kind of, we do mixtures where maybe an owner has a kind of a basement, right, that has a separate entrance. We can rent that separate, bottom floor, no problem for you, and help you get that permit as well, as long as you can provide proof of residency. The problem becomes when someone bought a residentially zoned property, they call me saying, hey, Pete, we're really excited to try to short-term rent this. We've just finished closing. And I say, but you live in California. You can't provide, a voter ID card or driver's license or bank statements, et cetera, linking you to this property. You're kind of, out of luck.
Well,
there's nothing you can really do.
At that point, though, you could still do a 30-day rental?
Absolutely. And the
midterm
regulations here are 28 days or less. You have to have a permit. Anything above that. So we're seeing, and like Lisa alluded to, during COVID, we actually switched tons of our properties depending on where they were. And we are partners with our, just like many managers are, we take a percentage of your revenue. So obviously we need to be as equally successful. We don't make money unless you do. And at the end of the day, you're always going to make more as a self-manager. I'm not going to, paint the walls over your eyes and say that we can make you more. The odds are, if you have multiple properties, 4 or more, the odds are we can make you far more just due to the time with. I mean, Lisa will tell you this, but it takes some time. You can't just throw it up and, cross your fingers. Like, you got to have reviews. You got to scale up. You got to, build excellent listings. You need to respond to those reviews in a good amount of time. So my company does all this for you. So if you're planning on investing out of state into Nashville, or any market for that matter, and really quickly, I'll just touch on Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg, which is another excellent market in Tennessee. We were seeing, Nashville's an urban market. Urban markets were affected at a much higher clip during COVID than any other markets, I would argue, because people are leaving these urban areas where you go out to a bar, to a venue, to a whatever. Social distancing does not really work in an urban market as much as a mountain market where you're sitting with your friends around a campfire. So we were seeing literally record, and still continuing to see record highs of occupancy in Gatlinburg, mountain towns, Destin, areas like this. Whereas we're definitely seeing a big boost, and we actually exceeded even our summer rental revenue on some of our rentals during September, which is pretty incredible in my opinion. just when you look at trends, that's not something you would predict.
I guess
But we're seeing.
Yeah, bring it back to Nashville though too, right? Like, and I think it's a fair point to say, if you want to invest, maybe thinking about other areas within the state could be a good option. But ultimately, I think what we showed and what you said, Lisa, there is demand in Nashville, and it is can be tricky to navigate. But if you can figure it out, there can be some real return. I don't know, Lisa, if you wanted to chime in one more time on that.
Yeah, I would say the demand is definitely there. They call it Nash Vegas for a reason. I mean, there's a huge draw for these bachelorette parties, and they're great guests too, I might add. Like you think that you might be attracting, you think a bachelorette party, maybe that would bring some mischief. It is so not. They're the nicest groups, and they're there celebrating, and they get out on the town and they come back and have girl time together. They're coming from all over, the country and gathering in a great city. It's been a great experience for us. Our guests have been wonderful, and they've taken great care of our home, and the demand has been steady. So we've really enjoyed the market.
No, that's great. Thanks. And to what you said, Pete, making sure you're working with the right experts, someone like yourself, to navigate it is just a best practice. And then especially in Nashville, how important that is. So
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we do have 3 minutes left to see if there are any questions in the audience. So I don't know, Heidi, if you've seen any, or Dana. I'll kind of open it up, see what we've got.
Yeah, I haven't seen any pop through yet, but maybe if anybody wants to chime in. Other than that, we'll just keep rolling along and talk about ASTHRO membership. Oh, we do have one real quickly. Thank you. Thank you for presenting the info. You're very welcome.
Yeah, it's complex, but that was a lot of great information. So, it looks like we do have another question. Will a replay be available? Absolutely. Yes, this is being recorded.
Sorry, I would just add as a parting word that, as far as, Lisa's volunteer service to be on the NASTRA board, that takes a lot. She's, running her business. She has her personal and professional life and everything else going on. And to know that those that are in those leadership roles, they're always welcoming members of the community that want to raise their hands for ad hoc activities, whether it's showing up to a certain city council meeting or doing outreach or gathering, possibly city council candidates if you have an election happening in your community this year or next, and just saying, hey, I want to help. I maybe can't serve as a board member committee, but I want to be a volunteer. So just encourage wherever you're listening to this from to find a local alliance and volunteer your time, because it's a relief for those that are in those leadership positions to have those that want to help.
And Dana, I'd like to just really quick chime in on that. I'm also a member of NASTRA, but the REIN group, or your real estate investor group, wherever your city is, definitely get involved with them, because as these markets continue to grow and short terms become more and more popular, it's an amazing way to find good deals, especially that are already renting, where you can find good rental history so that you're taking a little bit of the guesswork out of the game.
I think, I'm not sure if you can see it, Lisa, Patricia is interested. So maybe we can connect the two of you to learn more if you see that chat. So
yeah, and she did ask if there would be a replay, and we will certainly post this to our YouTube channel within our membership community, members.asthro.org, and I think also on our Facebook Live channel. So we'll have lots of opportunity. There's all the great links to visit Rent Responsibly, everything for ASTHRO as well. And we really appreciate everybody's time today. Real quick as a recap, membership is just $10 a month or $100 annually to get full access to all the member perks and benefits, the group, and full access to all of our courses. So definitely worthwhile to join, and we welcome you to come into our membership community and learn more. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody again. We really
Thanks.
appreciate your time. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great
Have
one.
an
Thank
excellent
you.
day.
You too. Bye.